Bayonetta 3 is finally here. So, is the newest installment in the action franchise worth the wait? And how does it stack up against its predecessors? In this video, I'll be sharing what I liked and disliked about the game. This will be a spoiler-free review, and I've broken up this review into sections, so feel free to skip to the time code of the sections that interest you. With that out of the way, let's jump right into it. When an interdimensional stranger literally falls from the sky looking for Bayonetta, our hero is called back to action to protect reality from a multiversal threat. In this game, you'll travel through multiple different realities and meet multiple Bayonettas to reach the Alphaverse, and put a stop to the multiversal destruction once and for all. While the first two games in the series were concerned with the angels from Paradiso and demons from Inferno, this game feels entirely separated from that storyline, with angels and demons replaced by new enemies, man-made bioweapons known as the homunculi. Considering its detachment from the storyline of the previous games, Bayonetta 3's storyline is considerably easier to follow, with the stakes clearly established from the beginning, as well as a clear adversary to defeat and a goal to reach. As a result, it's much easier to be engaged by the storyline, and you don't need to have played the previous two games to follow it. The story is primarily told through fully animated cutscenes, which are full of camp and visual excitement. If you've played Bayonetta 1 and 2, you may remember some cutscenes were just stylized still images with voiceover. While I was disappointed that that style of cutscene returned a little, there were far fewer of them and the majority of cutscenes are fully realized. It makes for much more engaging storytelling. That aside, there are still problems with storytelling to be found. Certain character motivations are weaker than others, and there are some downright silly and confusing moments. This is par the course for the series and shouldn't ruin your enjoyment of the game. Those looking for logical storytelling ought to look elsewhere, but the campiness gives it that unique Bayonetta charm. Without spoiling anything, there are a lot of emotionally charged moments that surprisingly left me speechless, and were quite unexpected for a game like Bayonetta. It has the best and most coherent storyline of the three games in the series, and despite a few issues, it is a satisfying story that serves the gameplay well. The campaign clocks in at around 12 hours on the standard difficulty, but it is very replayable with a lot of bonus levels along the way. Immediately after finishing it on the standard difficulty, I went straight into it again on the expert difficulty. While I would have liked the story to have been a bit longer, I feel it's the longest of the three games thus far. Once again, Bayonetta shines as the protagonist, back with her sassy attitude and over-the-top campiness. Summoning demons with her hair and wielding guns attached to her feet, she is still a video game character unlike any other. This time around, she has access to more costumes and weapons than ever before, which gives an insane amount of variety to the gameplay experience. The costumes are visually striking and customizable. It was truly a joy changing costumes, colors, and hairstyles for variety. The new weapons continue this theme of variety, as does the new demon summoning mechanic, which I'll get into later. This time, she is voiced by Jennifer Hale. I won't get into the voice controversy of this game, but Hale gives an excellent performance as the title character, and slips comfortably into the role. If you weren't aware the voice actress had changed between games, you'd be forgiven for thinking it was the same actress. You'll also be spending a decent amount of time playing as Viola, the previously mentioned interdimensional stranger. With a personal stake in the story, she gives the game its emotional heart in contrast to the campiness of the title character. She is also the secondary playable character, so you'll be spending a decent amount of time playing as her. I found her to be an endearing character initially, with her clumsiness and her punk rock attitude contrasting with the sassiness and camp of Bayonetta. Characters Jean, Rodin, Luca, and Enzo return as supporting characters, with Luca having an expanded role in the storyline, which I won't get into here for the sake of spoilers. Sadly, I felt fan favorite Jean is underutilized, and I was disappointed that she doesn't have much of an arc in this game, and is basically just there as assistance to Bayonetta and Viola. The enemies of this game, the homunculi, sadly failed to make much of an impression on me. They have some pretty bonkers designs, looking like a cross between Lovecraftian abominations and rejected Kingdom Hearts enemies. They all have the same green and white color scheme, and overall feel quite homogeneous and are lacking variety, especially compared to the visually striking angels and demons from Bayonetta 1 and 2. Without spoiling anything, I was underwhelmed by the villain of this game, whose motivations weren't very clear or interesting to me. While they're fun to kill, they're nowhere near as memorable as the dramatic designs of enemies from previous games. Despite the Nintendo Switch's not so great performance, this game excels at environments. While I found the earlier game settings of Manhattan and Tokyo to be a little pale and uninteresting, once Bayonetta starts traveling into alternate dimensions does the environmental design really excel. I don't want to spoil the locations you'll be visiting, but the variety between them is huge. You'll find Bayonetta in cities, tunnels, and natural locations, with battles and environmental destruction taking place in the distance. While Bayonetta 3's enemies are a bit bland and lack variety, the opposite is true of the environments. While Bayonetta 1 and 2's environments were a bit homogeneous and repetitive, there's a lot of variety here and a real sense of excitement when visiting a new area. The crux of the Bayonetta series is delivering satisfying combos, while facing multiple enemies at once, or during thrilling boss battles. You use the X and A buttons to deliver kicks and punches, and the Y button to shoot. ZR is dodge, and if you dodge just before an enemy strikes you, you'll activate Witch Time, which stops all enemy movements and allows you to deliver a satisfying combo. Combined with the insane amount of weapons, you have almost unlimited options in how you approach combat. Despite the sheer number of weapons and combos, it never feels overwhelming, as each weapon is easy enough to use, and there is no steep learning curve to each one. Unlike games like Monster Hunter, where each weapon plays differently, the weapons follow the same control scheme, respond quickly, and are a joy to use. When starting a new mission, I would always change the weapon, as it's truly fun to see how they all play. Just great stuff. New to the series is the ability to summon demons, essentially giant monsters that fight for Bayonetta, while at the same time leaving Bayonetta vulnerable. Activated with ZL, you hold down the button and deliver combos using the same control scheme as Bayonetta. Demons play much slower than Bayonetta, but are much more powerful and give a cinematic quality to battles, especially against bigger enemies. Like weapons, there's a huge variety to choose from, with some later unlockable demons being genuinely hilarious and surprising, and I won't spoil them for you here. Also new to combat is the combo finisher, which requires you to tap ZL when the screen flashes at the end of Bayonetta's combo, which will summon the assigned demon to finish the combo for you. This mechanic has been taken directly from Platinum Games' last outing, Astral Chain, and transplanted to Bayonetta. This mechanic is just as satisfying and adds a new beat to the rhythm of combos that was not found in Bayonetta 1 or 2. Overall, combat as Bayonetta is remarkably fun. However, we have to talk about the new playable character, Viola. While I like Viola as a character and she is a welcome presence in the series, Bayonetta 3 is let down by sections where you're forced to play as her. She fights with a katana and only has one summonable demon. The lack of customization alone is enough to make you groan when you're forced to play as her, but the way she handles in combat is far worse. While a perfect dodge as Bayonetta will trigger Witch Time with her, with Viola you must instead trigger a perfect parry using the shield button R. The timing window to get a perfect parry is noticeably different to Bayonetta's perfect dodge. Coupled with being mapped to a different button, it's painfully difficult to execute and leads to extreme frustration. As for her demon is controlled automatically, leaving you to fight as Viola while he rampages in the background. While it's a nice variation, it is just not as fun as using Bayonetta's demons. The instances of playing as Viola are few, so when a Viola section rolls around, you've already forgotten how to use her, and will immediately long for Bayonetta's much more satisfying playstyle. While I was excited to experience a new playstyle in this series, Viola sadly does not make a good impression, and does let the overall experience of the game down. There are moments where gameplay changes during chapter climaxes, where Bayonetta transforms into a giant demon. These vary from scenario to scenario, and take inspiration from a variety of different genres, like fighting games and rhythm games. Most of these are just weird, but not that hard, and I'm not sure how I feel about these brief forays into other genres. Sometimes they're a bit janky though. A fast-paced earlier sequence has you as a giant spider demon running along sinking buildings, and it's way too easy to miss time jumps and fall off, and this spider demon has a wall climbing gimmick which doesn't always work as intended and leads to instant death. While these happen from time to time, I would have liked these to be more consistent and not interrupt the flow of the gameplay experience as they do. However, they're not as bad as the insta-fail quick-time events of Bayonetta 1, so that's a plus at least. Jean has a few playable sections this time around, taking the form of a 2D stealth minigame. I actually really enjoyed these sections. They were fun and didn't overstay their welcome. I would happily play a full game like this. A Jean stealth spin-off on the Nintendo eShop is just begging to be made, and I would be there for it. Throughout missions, you'll encounter optional battles to gain extra in-game currency, which can be used to purchase purchase power-ups and healing items, accessories, collectibles, and new costumes. Most of these are fun, however the trial-style battles that come with conditions like no witch time, no items, limited weapons, and so on, vary between easy and frustrating as hell. Some of them you'll pass easily, and others you'll fail multiple times before giving up in frustration. This is nothing new for the series, and I found myself skipping a lot of them to just get on with the story. Getting currency is less important this time around. Like a lot of newer games, in-game currency has little value at this point. It's easy to collect it and purchase new costumes and healing items. This is in stark contrast to the previous games, when currency was not only precious, but the shop had limits on how many healing items you could purchase at one time. The shop is now fully stocked with items, so you can purchase as many healing lollipops as you like. While I'm sure many would find this a welcome change which makes the game easier, as someone who likes their games hard, this takes a lot of the risk and reward factor out of the game. You will trigger a lot less game over screens from the previous games as a result. On the topic of items, they are no longer mapped to buttons for easy use mid-combat. You must now pause the action to open the menu and select it from there. The same goes for weapons, costumes, and demons, so you'll find yourself pausing and opening menus a lot more than before. I realize this is an unavoidable reality of a more customizable experience, but I found it frustrating having to stop the music and rhythm of an exciting battle just to heal. Furthermore, very frustratingly, you cannot access the equip menu between missions, which just boggles the mind. Between missions is a perfect time to change costumes, weapons, and demons, but you must start a mission, get through the opening cutscenes, and then equip what you want. This is a baffling decision, and I really hope this gets fixed in an upcoming update. As for difficulty settings, I found the standard difficulty a perfect entry point. Right now, I'm playing it again on expert, which after having completed on standard is a logical progression, and in my opinion makes the game even more fun, as it introduces much greater risk and reward. There's also the very hard infinite climax difficulty, which I'm yet to try, but if you like your games hard like me, you'll have a great time with Bayonetta 3. Nitpicks aside, overall the gameplay is fun, fast, and satisfying. Combat is tight and stylistic, and Bayonetta 3 is a formidable entry into the action genre, and Platinum Games have truly outdone themselves. Despite beautiful environments and character designs, the game is unsurprisingly let down by performance issues. I'm not an expert on the subject, but resolution is soft in places and frame rates vary here and there. Thankfully, the frame rate is consistent in combat, but appears to slow down in cutscenes, which can be a bit jarring. Platinum gets around this in many ways, like using the same blurring effect they used in Astral Chain, and using some of the stylized, non-animated cutscenes. While characters are stylized and not realistic, some of the human NPCs earlier in the game really look a bit terrifying, with weird and janky faces. They remind me a lot of the NPCs from New Donk City and Super Mario Odyssey, which is not a great comparison to make. This game is pushing the Switch hardware to its absolute max, so the fan of my launch model Switch was blasting noisily basically the entire time I was playing the game, even during menus and level select screens. In a few years, I'm sure this trilogy will be remastered for a later console, where it will run significantly better. I'd love to see that version of Bayonetta 3, with higher resolution and a more consistent frame rate, as well as enhanced textures and facial animations. The music of this game absolutely slaps. The music quality is top notch, a hallmark of this series, and Bayonetta 3 boasts the best soundtrack of the series yet. Combat music is fast and exciting, emotional moments are underscored powerfully, and the way the music changes between environments gives a great amount of variety. As this game takes you through multiple dimensions, each dimension has music to match the environment, which helps each world feel distinct and gives each world greater character. Vocal songs return, with this game's battle theme being a stylized cover of Moonlight Serenade, following in the footsteps of previous games' moon-themed songs, Fly Me to the Moon and Moon River. Viola sections introduce rock flair and electrical guitars to the series with her theme music, which helps distinguish her as a character from the poppier Bayonetta. Her battle music helps improve her disappointing playable sections. Honestly, I could listen to this game's soundtrack all day, and I really hope it comes to streaming services soon. Sound effects are once again incredibly satisfying. Punches, kicks, and shots are loud and crisp, and really immerse you in combat. Voice acting is top notch, and I would argue Hale's performance as the lead character is better than Taylor's ever was. And series newcomer Anna Brisbane gives real heart to Viola and helps endear us to the new character. A daunting task given how beloved Bayonetta is, but her voice work stands comfortably alongside Hale's. Luca, Jean, Rodan, and Enzo are all voiced by their previous actors, making a welcome return. Luca's voice actor Yuri Lowenthal particularly shines, giving more emotion to this character than ever before. Overall, this game has perfect sound design and mixing, and should be played with headphones to get the most out of it. You can't really talk about Bayonetta without acknowledging Devil May Cry. It's pretty clear that the Bayonetta franchise is very much living in the shadow of DMC. The introduction of Viola reminds me of the introduction of Nero in that franchise. I think a lot of players initially won't really take to Viola, in the same way a lot didn't initially take to Nero. Both franchises deliver satisfying combat, gameplay variety, and insane action, but I still feel DMC on the PlayStation is superior, considering it performs better, and Nero is as satisfying to play as Dante, where Viola is not as satisfying as Bayonetta. Similarly, Platinum takes a lot of Astral Chain's DNA and puts it into this game, and Astral Chain feels like it was the team's warm-up for this. Right down to the purple color scheme, the enemy design, the newly added combo finisher, and cameo appearances by that game's character Lappy. It's all here in Bayonetta 3. The demon summons remind me of the legions from Astral Chain, monsters that fight for you in the background, and the enemy design of the homunculi look like the enemies straight out of Astral Chain. They even share the same name. They're both called homunculi. While it's not necessarily a bad thing, for someone who has played both games, it's very obvious to see the similarities, and makes the two games feel a bit too similar. However, Astral Chain is still a great experience in its own right, and I feel Bayonetta 3 makes up for a lot of that game's shortcomings. That game was too slow to get going and introduced certain mechanics way too late in the game. Such mechanics like demon summons and finishing moves are available from the beginning in Bayonetta 3. I can only hope for an Astral Chain sequel to expand this concept further. So, Bayonetta 3 is an unmissable experience and the best game in the franchise. It's a must-play for fans of the action genre, and veterans of and newcomers to the series alike. Satisfying gameplay, emotional storytelling, and incredible music combine to make a thrilling and exciting package. Let down occasionally by poor villains, an unsatisfying new playable character, and less than stellar performance issues. These aside, it's fun and well worth your time, clocking in at just over 12 hours, with replay value for both completionists and casual gamers. I truly feel it's one of the best games of the year, and one of the best games on the Nintendo Switch. So, have you played Bayonetta 3? What did you think? How does it compare to other games? Please let me know in the comments down below, and I'll be responding to each one. If you found value in that review, don't forget to smash that like button. It helps support my channel and my growth as a creator. In my next review, I'll be reviewing Sonic Frontiers for the PlayStation 4. So if that interests you, please be sure to hit that subscribe button. Thanks for listening to me ramble, and I'll see you next time.